Delighted to say I'm joined by Neil Loughran of the Irish News. Neil, you were at the big match of the weekend, Maghery's 4-9 to 17 points win over Crossmaglen. What sort of a game was it? This was Maghery's second ever title, I believe.
Yep, second title in 5 years or 4 years, is it? In 2016 they won their first one. So it was a very good game actually. I went to the athletic ground yesterday not necessarily expecting it to be a great game. Maghery hadn't been, they probably hadn't been scoring a whole lot through the championship. But speaking to their manager after yesterday, they obviously look at the way Crossmaglen set up. Crossmaglen still set up, like, I don't know how many clubs across Ireland set up the way Crossmaglen do, because they still set up very traditionally, like the three inside all day yesterday. And Maghery obviously had targeted that and thought, well, now this is the chance to maybe cut loose a bit and take our chances whenever we get the breaks, and they did that, like with four goals. They knew that the goal threat was going to be crucial yesterday, and they had 4 chances and scored 4 goals. Crossmaglen had 5 goal chances and scored none. And normally Cross will try and blitz teams early, and there was a point where I think they scored eight in a row, and 2 O'Neill brothers were just running riot at that stage, and you feared for Maghery a bit at that time, but they came back into it, and the goals really were the killer for Cross.
And how important was Aidan Forker to all this? He scored 1-3. I think he got sent off right at the very end.
He did, like literally seconds before the end, but he's very important to Maghery. It is unusual to think that the same guy in a month's time will be, chasing around one of the probably the different best forwards in Ulster or Ireland, All Ireland, depending on how Armagh go. He's been made into a man marker under Kieran McGeeney the last year, I think it was. Conor McManus and all these guys, and he did really well on them. But whenever you see him in Armagh playing as a forward, who you realise the capability that he has, and his goal yesterday was class. And again, it summed up to me just that the approach that Maghery had, which was that they couldn't, they had to kind of keep their foot on the neck of Crossmaglen when they had them, because that came about from Ben Creeley won the ball in midfield and found Aiden around the 45, and the referee, he could have taken an attacking mark, and it was central enough. He would have probably put it over, but he didn't even pause for a second. He was, just went straight in on goal and lashed it home, because they knew that they had to, and that put them, I think, 5 up at that stage and really in the box seat. So he's a central figure for Maghery. He was man of the match, and he's sort of their spiritual leader without wanting to get too bit on it.
Yeah, because I see him sometimes playing for Armagh, like you say, and he's doing a man marking job and he's full back. But then you see how good he is at driving forward, and he seems a fairly complete sort of a player. Do you think people outside of Armagh and Ulster realise how good he is, and he's probably up there in some of the best players in the country?
On his day, he's very good, and like the way that he plays, probably for a couple of years he suited Armagh. He would have played more as probably a wing back, wing forward under Geezer in his time in charge, because his delivery is so good. He's very, very good kick passer from deep. Whether he maybe just has the pace at the very top of intercounty level to really make that difference in the forwards, I don't know. Maybe that's why he has kind of dropped back. But he's also an experienced, intelligent guy. I know he's certainly, like, within Armagh, he would be rated as one of, if not the best player in the county. Most of the time he's been captain of Armagh. So he's not somebody who's underrated up here. He would be somebody who in the past would have been seen as, and maybe to a point, I'm talking the day after he's been sent off, but would have a bit of a flashpoint temper, and I know it's something that he's worked on. When you talk to him, he talks about, like, even yesterday morning he was reading the notes that he had written the morning of the 2016 final when they beat Cullyhanna to try and get himself in the frame of mind for where he was and what he was feeling that day. So he's a guy who thinks deeply on the game and on his own preparation, and he's invaluable for Armagh, I think, and whatever Kieran McGinney feels, wherever he feels he can best serve the team, he obviously sees that Aidan can do the job there, and he showed that last year.
Did he reveal what those notes from 2016 said?
Something about breathing deep. No, I don't know. He didn't say too much. No, but just I think he keeps fairly extensive notes of a lot of things. Ahead of a lot of games, to just that seems to be the way that he approaches. He's very, as I say, he's very much somebody who takes his own preparation very seriously, both mentally and physically. And he wanted to come into yesterday's game. They knew exactly. The thing about Maghery and Crossmaglen yesterday was when Maghery won the 2016 Armagh title, they did so without beating Crossmaglen. Cullyhanna beat Crossmaglen in the semi-final, and it wasn't that it was a stick that was used to beat Maghery at all, but it was something that was probably brought up every now and again. He didn't beat Cross. So yesterday was a different kind of experience, and I think probably a more sweeter victory because of that. Because Cross just don't lose finals. That was the first county final they've lost since 1982. Out of 23, 24 since, they don't. So that's a pretty big scalp for Maghery.
Yeah, I was reading your piece in the Irish News, and you were saying that you wouldn't have paid much more than 70p for a pint the last time Crossmaglen came out on the wrong side of an Armagh final. 1980.
A few people got on to me actually saying that they remember around the same time getting around for £1.
Wow.
I was thinking, glory days.
Yeah, and when you saw Crossmaglen with a 4-point lead coming up to the half hour, were you thinking Cross will probably see this out again? And then Brian Fox gets a goal 2 minutes into injury time.
Definitely. I mean, at that stage they were in complete control. Rian O'Neill at times was playing the game on his own. He was just exceptional in that first half. Because he dropped back. Oisín, his brother, had actually started at midfield, but then moved into his more kind of traditional centre forward-ish position. Rian dropped back out around the middle and just was dominating everything, winning his own breaks. He was just everywhere doing everything, and him and Oisín, their connection was flying. I think Oisín had 6 points by the end of the first half, and at least 4 of them came from Rian providing the bullets for him. So, and at that stage, when Cross are one of those teams that when their dander is up, very, very hard to stop, and you just couldn't see. I couldn't see watching it where Maghery seemed to be just kind of clinging in. They were struggling to they weren't getting much on the scoreboard, but Brian Fox got that goal a couple of minutes into added time before half time, and that meant they only had a gap of 2 at the break, and they had a pretty significant wind after, and it just completely changed the face of it. That and the introduction of Ben Creeley at half time, I'd say those were the 2 crucial factors in yesterday's win.
And for a finish, Maghery won by 4 points. Was it just a case of don't concede a goal late on? Were they under much pressure?
They were. I mean, Cross were piling it on, but you never really. Sometimes in those kind of games you can sense that this is not over. It never really felt. You never felt like Maghery were going to lose it. I didn't anyway. But from most of the second half, they were the team that were in control. And again, the 2 goals that they got came at the best. 2 games and goals in the second half that they got came at the best possible time. So, Cross were having a right go at them. And to be fair, the Maghery goalkeeper, Keelan Hendren, he made 3 really good saves yesterday and kept Cross at bay. So I always felt that Maghery in the end looked comfortable. It looked like they were going to see the game out despite that pressure.
So I presume it was 400 people at this game. What was the atmosphere like? Final whistle.
It was actually very good because it was a cracking day. You weren't expecting the one thing I wasn't expecting was to get sunburnt there yesterday. few of the other journalists were saying similar, because we were sitting outside. That's where the press row was, and it was a good buzz. You missed, as I said in the report, it was weird having the trophy presentation on the pitch with no supporters, albeit a couple of stragglers made their way on, and then you're watching the teams, getting changed over on the concrete afterward. There's just wee reminders like that of the weird times that we're in, I guess. But I thought that there was still a good bit of it still felt like a good bit of an atmosphere. I'd say any of the games that I've been to, I don't know what your experience of it is. I imagine it's been completely different, because I know a couple of the other journalists who were there yesterday, Donald Boyle from the Indo and John Harrington, and they had obviously been to a lot of games down south, and this was one of the first with the crowd that they had been to. And the games I've been at, the Antrim Hurling Championship and all, it's felt like there's been a buzz at all of them. It hasn't really felt flat, to be honest with you. And you weren't looking around yesterday going, if this was 15,000 people here, it would be, it'd feel like something completely different. But you just get caught up in it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time of the weekends I've been playing matches, and then a few times I've been at matches, and there's still a bit of noise because you've got the benches on both teams and they're giving it socks, but it's definitely not quite the same. But even playing the games, a lot of the time you play a league game and there's more or less no one at it except for the benches anyway. So it actually doesn't feel all that unusual to me, but county finals are so much different. But do you think Maghery would be, do you think part of them, they're a little bit disappointed that they don't have an Ulster Championship to look forward to?
I think they are, because they probably feel like they've a bit of unfinished business in that respect. As often happens whenever a team wins a first county championship. Maghery went into Ulster last time, and the clubs are just so delighted to get that get over the line with that one win, that they tend not to worry, not to worry too much about the provincial campaign. But it wasn't the priority at the start of the year, I suppose. And they ended up playing Kilcoo, and they probably didn't do themselves justice, I would say. They would feel at that time. So I'd say that they wouldn't have minded a rattle at it. And Finian Moriarty, their manager, yesterday said, if any kind of decision was made on maybe having a provincial campaign in January, that they'd be bang up for it, they'd be ready for it, But I think for the time being, they were just happy to enjoy. As I say, Cross don't lose too many finals, so to get, to achieve what they did yesterday, I think they were just happy to lap that up.
Yeah, and is there any sense that Cross could be on a downward trajectory, or do you just expect them to be back next year at the sharp end of the tournament once more?
Yeah, I would. They suffered a couple of serious. Well, they lost a couple of big players in the week leading into the game. Stephen Morris, their midfielder, has been a big player for them this year, and I suppose if he'd played, would Rian O'Neill have played so much? Would he have played out so much? Would he have had more threat inside? Because probably inside they didn't do a whole lot of damage. Now, having said that, their young forward, what was his name, Darragh O'Callaghan, that was the first I had seen of him, and he looked a real class lefty, and showed himself up to, showed a lot of class. But the likes of Cian McConville, who you would have expected a lot of, just didn't really get into the game. And I suppose they have a couple of older guys, the Tony Kernans, Aaron Kernans, even Paul Hardy was on the bench yesterday, because they lost their goalkeeper, Tiernan McConville, through the week. So Paul Hardy, who I think maybe retired 3 years ago, ended up on the bench yesterday. Cross will always produce players, they just will. And I know they were going for 3 in a row, but you'd be a madman to write them off for next year. And they were 4-1. I think the odds going into yesterday's game where they were 4-1 on or something like that, or maybe Maghery were 4-1. So that shows. I think it could have been a different game if those couple of guys had been available. Stephen Morris, as I say, was a big loss, but Cross will come again. There's still a player producing factory down there.
And you mentioned that they'll always produce players, and I was just thinking to myself, they'll probably always produce managers too. When you think of of John McEntee with Clontibbert over Monaghan, and then up against him didn't Oisin McConville take Inniskeen very close to getting to the final.
Yeah, and the two of them were on the line together with Cross in up until 2015, I think, or 2016. So like, there's obviously, there's so many players coming through there. Stephen Kernan's the current manager, who's a former Cross captain. You even look at Aaron Kernan. Like, Aaron Kernan's must be a cert to be a Cross manager down the line. There's just always that understanding, I think, in Cross, that like, when you've served your time on the field, that you'll do your bit off the field. I know Tony McEntee's involved with some of the underage teams at the minute there. He's not involved with any other club or county at the minute, so who knows what'll happen. But I'd say Stephen Kernan will give it another go next year too, because they'll want to put this right. But yeah, they're never short of guys coming through, and it's always the same sorts of names, and they've had so many great players through the years and so much experience to bring of winning things, who every generation of Crossmaglen players, right down to under-8s will look up to the guys who've been there the last 25 years winning trophies. It's ready-made.